everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen, and I'm here today with a TBR tour. As I said in my mid-year freakout tag, I would be doing a TBR tour, which I wasn't planning to do. I figured one TBR tour a year would be enough at the beginning of the year to give kind of an idea of what I'd be reading that year. But then I got this really adorable book cart and completely rearranged my TBRs because the top two shelves of this are TBR books. And so I decided a mid-year update wouldn't be the worst thing. And I will link that mid-year freakout tag down below along with my previous TBR tour. And as I said in my previous TBR tour, I have kind of a complicated TBR setup with lots of rules, but all of which I bend and break at my whim. But I'll give a quick little rundown of that, or I'll try to make it quick. So I have like 4 categories of TBR. I have kind of fun standalone books, more serious standalone books, series, and rereads. And this top shelf is my kind of more fun standalone books. Although, as you can see, I'm already breaking my own rules by having these 2 series up here. But I have not started either of those series, and when I start a new series, I typically only read the first book in the series, and then I take a long break before continuing with the series, and I'll reread the first book. I don't know why I do this, I just like to. But for that reason, I tend to, if I haven't started a series yet, I will bump it to the standalone books because that TBR tends to be a shorter wait than my series shelf. So I can get to them sooner, and since I'm only reading the first one, it's kind of like I'm reading a standalone. Or at least, that's my logic. So then this second shelf, this side of the shelf are my series, obviously, and this right side of the shelf are my more serious standalone books. And then this bottom shelf here is not a TBR shelf for the most part, other than this one little guy hanging out right here. This is my Own Voices shelf, which is a brand new shelf, so not a lot of books on it yet, but I hope to build this shelf as time goes on. And then aside from my TBR cart, I have kind of an overflow shelf over in the closet, which I will be going to later in the video, and over here by my actual bookshelves, which are off screen, but I will be going to the shelf later in the video as well, is my reread shelf. And I organize it like this just to kind of make sure that I'm getting to all of my books. And I have a whole separate system for how I pick my rereads, which I will explain when I get to that shelf. And again, all of these rules are super bendy and things are constantly being rearranged. And for that reason, I'm not going to attempt to read off my TBR shelf in the order that I'm planning to actually read them, jumping from shelf to shelf. That would be way too much work, and it's all gonna change eventually anyways. So instead, I will just be going shelf by shelf. So hopefully I haven't lost you with all the over-explanation already, and we can jump right into it. So starting with my standalone fun reads. This one right now is actually starting right here and then working its way over and then down. And as I'm completing books, I'm pulling from the overflow shelf and putting them over here. So again, complicated and hard to keep track of. I love spending as much of my brain power on my books as I can, apparently. But for convenience sake, I will start here, even though this is technically the last book on the shelf. And this is Skyward by Sanderson, which has an absolutely gorgeous cover. I love this shade of purple. And this is actually the first book that I completely credit my owning it to BookTube. I put this on my wish list for Christmas, specifically because I saw a lot of booktubers talking about it, and it did look like my kind of book. So, my first BookTube book. Next I have Scythe by Shusterman. And this one I was excited for the moment I saw the cover in the bookstore. It obviously is a very intriguing cover, and the concept is very interesting, and it's a dystopian, which I love dystopians, so I was immediately interested in it for those reasons, but also because Neil Schusterman wrote one of my childhood favorites, one that is a little bit less well known than his other books, and that is Downsiders. So if you like his other books, I definitely recommend going and checking out Downsiders. Next I have I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson, They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera, Towers Falling by Jewel Parker Rhodes. And then I have this very cute flower pot, which was from my Once Upon a Book Club box. Feel free to go check out the unboxing videos for those too. That I like to keep here on my book cart, and it's super cute. And then also this little keychain of Icelandic rock that I got from my Bibliophilic Excursions box, which the unboxing that this one came from is coming soon, or perhaps already out. I'm not sure exactly what order I'm going to be posting these. But yeah, also go check out those videos. But getting back to the books, next I have Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, which I have seen the movie for this, so I'm excited to read the book. I liked the movie quite a lot, and I've also read another book by Jojo Moyes that I really enjoyed called The Last Letter from Your Lover. Then I have The Cellar by Natasha Preston, Moxie by Jennifer Matthew, Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson, and Again But Better by Christine Riccio. And this is the first book that I have that the author is a booktuber. So I'm really excited for this one and excited to see how it is. All right, moving on to shelf number 2, and we will start with the series category. And on top of that is a jewelry box that I have had since I was a baby. My aunt got this for me when I was born, and I promptly, as a child, covered it with stickers. So this one actually goes bottom up in the order that I'm going to be reading them, because the series that I'm currently reading has very large books, so it belongs at the bottom. So first is the final... Oops. Anyways, first is the final book in the Inheritance cycle, Inheritance by Christopher Palini. I am rereading this series because I want to read the short stories book that he wrote that takes place in the same world as these that he published last year, but I wanted to refresh my memory first, and it's just taken me a year to get around to it. But I've been really loving my reread of the Inheritance cycle. And then I have Zeros by Scott Westerfeld, Margot Lanigan, and Deborah Biancotti. Everything's falling. And this is a trilogy, and I have read the first two so far. I read this one, and then about a year later, I read the first two, and now I'm going to be reading all three of them. This is a YA novel about teenagers with very interesting superpowers, not like your regular superpowers. So a really fun, interesting concept with characters with powers that are very interesting to read. And finally on my series shelf is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. And I have read the first one already, and I now plan to read all three straight through. The first one was so good and so exciting that I really just want to read the whole series. It is an extremely unique concept that creates a world that's very interesting to read about. Next, moving on to my more serious or more heavy standalone books, which honestly my standards for which books fall in this category and which books fall in my lighter standalone books category is just very, very fluid. There's not a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it. But first I have this really gorgeous envelope opener. Envelope opener? Envelope cutter? Envelope knife? I don't know. Letter opener! Letter opener. First I have this really... oh gosh, words, what are they? First I have this really gorgeous letter opener that I got from the Bibliophilic Excursions box. Once again, I encourage you to go watch the video. But back to the books. First I have The Memory Keeper's Daughter by Kim Edwards. Next I have The First Girl Child by Amy Harden, and I got this from the Scribbler subscription box for writers. So even though this is, I think, kind of a fun fantasy YA, I put it on the series shelf because it came from my subscription box for writers, and so theoretically it's teaching me about writing. Plus that was a way to kind of push it up the TBR because again, my serious books category tends to be a little shorter than my fun books category. And I highly recommend the Scribbler subscription box for writers if you are a writer. It is my favorite subscription box that I have done, but I don't have any videos for it because I did that box before I started my booktube. Next I have In the Unlikely Event by Judy Blume, Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, Save Your Breath by Melinda Lee. This is another book that I got from the Scribbler subscription box for writers, and The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. And then hanging out down here by itself on the bottom shelf in my serious category of books to be read is 48 Days to the Work You Love by Dan Miller. And then as I said, my other 4 books down here are my own voices books. They are not on my TBR. I also have some cute notebooks down here, the box for the pins that I got from my Once Upon a Book Club box, and I also have some very cute tote bags hanging on the side of my book cart. This one I got from Barnes & Noble, Books Are the Quietest and Most Constant of Friends, Charles William Eliot, and this one I got from the Scribbler subscription box. And so yeah, that is it for my main TBR shelf, which is my book cart. When I got this, I moved all of the books that were out in the living room on the entertainment center that used to be my TBR shelf onto this shelf. And now we have like video games and stuff out there, and now all of my books are in one room, which is nice. So next up we have my to be read reread shelf, which is on the other side of the room, so I will have to readjust the camera. Okay, so here we are at my reread shelf, which my system for picking rereads is I actually just go through each of my shelves and I'll pick one book from each one in order, working from this way to that way. And once I'm done picking one from each shelf and rereading it, I will start back at the beginning, which will take quite some time with all the other books that I'm reading. Since my last TBR tour, which was at the beginning of the year, I have made it to, well, technically I haven't because I haven't read it yet, but I've made it to pulling from the top of my second set of bookshelves. So I've made it like halfway through my bookshelves, almost. Although, again, not really, because I have not actually read the book that I pulled from that shelf. It is still sitting here on the to be read. So anyways, a slow process. And I do this kind of to give all my books a kind of fair shot at being reread. I don't want to always be rereading the same books, so this kind of helps me to make sure that I'm varying it up a little bit. But I love to reread. To me, I don't want to hold on to a book if I don't plan to reread it. I think if I only read a book once, I really won't remember much about it if I then never read it again. So if I liked a book, I like to reread it. And some books I love so much that I really just kind of want to have the entire story memorized as much as possible. But anyways, right now my reread shelf is kind of small. I only have 3 books on it because, again, I mostly am pulling from these shelves, so it's not like they're going anywhere. And I like to have the shelf look somewhat nice, so big books on bottom, smaller books working their way up if possible. And right now the book that I have on bottom is very large, so it is stopping me from putting any new books on there. But anyways, getting into these 3 rereads that I'm planning to get to someday. First, I have Words in Deep Blue by Kath Crowley, and this was a book that I was super duper excited for. The concept sounded super cute. A lot of it takes place in a bookstore, which is always exciting. And then I do remember being kind of disappointed by it, but not enough that I just got rid of it, and so I did want to reread it. And I picked this one honestly because it's pretty short, and so it'll be quick to get through. And we'll have to see how I feel about it on a second read. There's a possibility that I might decide to get rid of it after this reread, or I might decide that I do like it after all and hold on to it. Next, I have Inkheart by Cornelia Funk, which is an absolute childhood favorite of mine. I loved the idea of being able to read characters out of their stories. And I haven't decided if I'm going to reread the whole series or just the first book. I feel guilty because I often just reread the first book because this does suffer from a fair amount of series lag. I don't love the second and the third book, but if I'm never going to reread them, then I feel like I should get rid of them, and I don't know if I want to get rid of them, so I haven't decided yet if I'm going to reread the whole series or just the first one. And the final book that is actually on the reread shelf for now is Harry Potter and the Cursed Child by J.K. Rowling. I got to the Harry Potter shelf in drawing from rereads, and this is the only one on the shelf, not the only one on the shelf, the only J.K. Rowling approved one on the shelf. How did she approve this? The only J.K. Rowling approved one on the shelf that I have only read once. I hated it, but it's Harry Potter, so I kept it, but it makes me angry. But also I kind of wanted to reread it to see if it's as bad as I remember. So I'm rereading it? I don't know what I'm doing to myself. If anything, I can maybe get a good rant video out of it. I don't know, I haven't decided. So yeah, I'm rereading this. Maybe next time I get around to the Harry Potter shelf, I'll reread the whole series, because it's been a while. And I want to still like the series. I do still like the series. This is terrible. She's not so great. But I still love the original series. It is a childhood favorite. It is the reason that I read. The reason that I started reading, at least. And I think the original series does still, for the most part, hold up. Obviously, every series has problems. And, you know, the childhood glamour has gone away enough to see them. But the series is still really good and solid. And I love the original series. But it's so long, so I didn't want to reread the whole thing, and I didn't really feel like cherry picking just one. So yeah. Okay, I've ranted enough about this, I think. I'm going down the rabbit hole. We'll see how much of that stays. Anyways, now moving on to my Overflow Tbr Shelf, which kind of has just all of my categories on it because it's the Overflow Shelf, but I do have them sort of separated into the different categories, as you will see. But again, I have to move the camera for that and head over into the closet. Okay, moving on to the final shelf, the Overflow Shelf, which over on the left side I have series, and then in the middle I have more serious books, and at the end I have the more lighthearted, fun books. And just in case you're curious, down here are books that I'm getting rid of, so not part of the TBR, and over here is also not part of the TBR. This is a series of unfortunate events, which I don't own the entire series, and even if I did, they kind of take up a lot of room, and I don't really have room for them on my shelves. And so since I don't own the whole series, I just kind of shoved them over here in the closet because I have space for them here and I don't really on my shelves. And I don't want to get rid of them because I did love these as a kid, and I still get a lot of enjoyment out of these. I don't know that I'll ever reread the entire series. I might reread some of the early books at some point because I do enjoy those more. And most importantly, if I should have kids one day, I would like them to be able to read those books because they are books that love books, and I really love that in a book for children. And then down here I have some choose your own adventure books, which I probably am too old for and should get rid of. But I haven't, because choosing your own adventure is fun. But also I didn't want them to take up space on my shelves, so they're here in the corner with a series of unfortunate events. But just going right through, first I have The Ask and the Answer by Patrick Ness, which I am planning to read immediately after The Knife of Letting Go, and I plan to order the third book online when I start the first book so that I can read all three straight through. Then I have Replica by Lauren Oliver. This one had such a unique concept. I was really excited for it. If you read it going one direction, you get Lyra's, I always pronounce it Lyra, which I like better, but it is technically pronounced Lyra. You get Lyra's story, and then you flip the book over, read it the other direction, you get Gemma's story, which I thought was such a cool concept. It's got such a cool cover that I was just super excited for this one, and then it was kind of a letdown. The concept didn't end up being as cool as I thought. It was a little bit slow, and honestly, if this weren't a duology, I would probably give it up on the first book. But since there's only one more to get through, I'm curious enough to go ahead and finish it. But if it were a longer series, I probably would abandon it. Then I have the Program series by Suzanne Young, which I have only read the first one so far, but I really liked the first one. It was really interesting to me, and I am excited to continue the series. But this is a long series. I think there's like 7 books or something. And I have a little bit of doubt that it will maintain the level of quality throughout the entire series. So when I pick it back up, I'm planning to read the first 3 books and see how that goes before I commit to more. Next, I have 3 Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake. This is another one that I really loved the first book a lot, and I haven't decided yet if I'm going to read the series straight through next time I pick it up. I think there are 4 or 5 of them. If it were 3, I would for sure just read it straight through, but we shall see. Next, I have Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo. And I can't remember if I've read this one as a kid. I know I've seen the movie. I think I might have read the book as a kid. Regardless, I actually got this for my nephew for Christmas, but I plan to read it before that time, because never miss a chance to read a book. And yes, I realize it is crazy early to be getting Christmas presents, but I saw it and I was like, why not? It was actually free, so. Next, I have Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, which I got in my Bibliophilic Excursions box. The Bonesetter's Daughter by Amy Tan. Cry the Beloved Country by Alan Patton, which I also got in the Bibliophilic Excursions box. The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. Independent People by Haldor Laxness. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correct. This was also from my Bibliophilic Excursions subscription box. Icelandic Folk Legends, which came in my Bibliophilic Excursions box. The Secret Papers of Madame Olivetti by Annie Vanderbilt. Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom. The Shack by W.M. Paul Young. Alex and Eliza by Melissa de la Cruz. Dry by Neil and Jared Schusterman. Sadie by Courtney Summers. Girl Online by Zoe Sugg. This Is Where It Ends by Marike Nishkamp. I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce this name. 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. Love and Luck by Jenna Evans Welch, which I realized was actually a series and was not the first one in the series after buying it. It was on sale for like $4 or $5 at a bookstore. But I think these might be ones where you don't necessarily have to read them in order to understand them. Kind of like Anna and the French Kiss. I'm not 100% sure on that though. So we'll find out when I get to it. I might look it up online and see. Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver, for which I have seen the movie and I actually liked the movie quite a lot, which was surprising to me because it is sort of a Groundhog Day type situation, which is usually a trope that I am not for at all, but I actually enjoyed it in the movie, and so I'm hoping I'll enjoy the book as well. And my 2 newest books, which I got earlier this week at a thrift store. A Totally Awkward Love Story by Tom Ellen and Lucy Ivanson, and The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. So yeah, that is my entire TBR tour. I don't think it is any shorter than it was at the beginning of the year, but that is only because I continually purchase more books than I even read. I do try to keep the books limited to the spaces they're currently in so that it's not just an ever-growing fountain of unread books. But I hope you enjoyed my TBR update. Thanks for watching. Remember, words matter.